I've been getting into emulation as of late since I've been wanting to play older games that just aren't for sale anymore, but I wanted a convenient way of doing it. I've already homebrewed my 3DS XL to emulate a bunch of different Nintendo consoles, but I wanted to try out one of those dedicated emulation devices that I have heard so much about. I'm probably going to be reviewing a lot more of these in the future because I am genuinely intrigued by devices just like it, since they all just tend to vary when it comes to processing power, what they can handle, and things like that. There's just a huge market for this kind of thing, so I will definitely be delving into that more in the future. But today specifically, we'll be taking a look at the Anbernic RG351P. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we continue, I just wanted to remind you that we have a Twitch channel where we stream every Friday and Saturday from 8 p.m. and to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, so why not go ahead and drop a follow? And also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and also make sure to check out the merch store. There's plenty of black and white sweetness to choose from up there, so go ahead and check that out. And then make sure to take a look at the podcast as well, as the podcast always goes live every Wednesday and Sunday. And with that said, enough rambling, let us get straight into the video. Now let's begin with an unboxing. It comes in this plain Jane box, which is going to reveal the foam cover for the RG351 and then the little console itself. Looks pretty good, but underneath you're going to find the USB-C cable, a USB-C adapter with a 2.4 GHz wireless adapter, a glass screen protector, and some alcohol wipes in order to be able to install it. I like this so far, and I did actually end up installing that screen protector, so the rest of the B-roll that you're going to be seeing is going to be with that screen protector on. The exterior design consists of this matte plastic, and while the plastic itself does feel cheap, the device as a whole still feels hefty and solid because of its weight, which is honestly a pretty great thing. It's about the size of a PSP, but slightly taller, I suppose, and boxier, and it is going to be a little more narrow in a sense too. On the front, you're going to find the display, your usual controls, with the start and select buttons up on top. On the back, there are some grips which do help with the ergonomics quite a bit. On the top, you're going to find your triggers and bumpers, as well as two USB-C ports, one that supports data only and another that supports data and power for charging, as well as a headphone jack. On the bottom, there's going to be a reset button, a micro SD card slot, and dual speakers. On the right, there's a volume knob of sorts, and on the left, there's going to be your sleep-wake button. This device is quite nice in its design so far, but let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into other aspects of it. So this device features a 3.5-inch 16:9 480x360 IPS display, which may seem pretty low resolution, but it's honestly really good enough for the types of games that you're going to be playing on here, and it is pretty colorful too. It is a pretty nice display for what it is, and I don't really have much nitpicking to do here either. So this device runs on the RetroArch emulation hub, which is capable of emulating a bunch of different consoles, though the interface on this device is quite nice and they've made it pretty easy to navigate. Once you turn it on, it'll show you the many different consoles that it can emulate, and you can click on any of these to access the many preloaded games. They've already got a great selection for PlayStation 1, DS, Game Boy Color, Dreamcast, and many more. But this console can emulate just about everything up to even the PSP and the Nintendo DS, which is quite impressive if I do say so myself. However, if you wanted to put in some games that aren't already included, then you can absolutely do that by just taking out the micro SD card and inserting it onto your computer, and then place your ROMs in the correct folders. I ended up adding games like Persona 2 Innocent Sin. I also ended up adding Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, but that's more of a PlayStation 1 game, some Final Fantasy games too, and they ended up adding Final Fantasy Dissidia as well. And for the PlayStation 1, I went more so with a lot more Final Fantasy games in that regard, like 7 and 8 and things like that. And I mean, here you've actually got around 64 gigs to play around with, which is a ton of storage for a system like this. But with that out of the way, how does this handle these different games? Let's talk about performance. So there are going to be good and bad news depending on what games you want to play. Let's start with the good first. I was pretty surprised when I tested the PSP emulator because it ran games really well. I played some Innocent Sin and Persona 3 to find that these games not only looked very colorful and sharp on this display, but also ran without any issues to speak of. Even something more action-packed like Dragon Ball Shin Budokai ran really well, and in fact, according to the frame rate reader right up top, it said that the game was running at a pretty solid 60 frames per second, which, I mean, I can trust it. It did feel like 60, and I didn't experience really any kind of hiccups here either. But when it came to the Dreamcast emulation, that was a little more shaky, especially with Sonic Adventure 2. I would experience random frame drops, and sometimes the audio would just get distorted altogether, which definitely messed with the experience here. And even on a display this small, the game still looks incredibly dated, like just considering that everything just looked overly sharpened, so it just looked extra pixelated to me, which was quite strange because virtually every other game on like any other system looked actually considerably better than what it did on the original system because it was running on such a nice display here. But I also tried the PlayStation 1 emulator with Final Fantasy 9, and I have no issues here at all. There are a lot of emulators here to test, but the one that gave me the most issues was the Dreamcast one, as the rest actually worked quite well. Though the DS one was another one I didn't love that much. I tested Super Mario 64 DS, and the frame rate wasn't too good here, and the game just felt lower per se. Not necessarily like it ran at a lower frame rate, it just felt like it was lagging somewhat. Like it was just a lot slower to actually control your character. It wasn't a very intuitive experience here. And also, I understand that having to alternate between displays here is inevitable, but it does mess with the experience of playing DS games that require the bottom screen at times. So prepare to have to deal with that when it comes to Pokemon games, when choosing your attacks and things like that. However, performance was very good in a lot of places, and not that great in others, but I personally wouldn't consider this to be really that big of a deal. I would not consider any particular one of these emulators to be unplayable by any means, but there are going to be compromises in some places. And naturally, with a gaming device like this, battery life isn't going to be astounding, but it is actually pretty decent on this machine in particular. It's rated to last around 8 hours, but I'd venture to say it's more like 5 to 6 hours from my own experience. Now let's go ahead and touch on some complaints. I don't love the buttons on this device because they're mushy, and that is especially true about the D-pad, which I very much wish at least it was a little bit clickier. Honestly, they just have a lot more travel than they need to, in my opinion. Like, they're just raised pretty high. I would have also preferred an actual volume rocker instead of this slider because it does feel pretty cheap, and I do wish that performance was more consistent when it came to certain games and emulators, but there's only so much that you can expect out of a $100 device like this. So I do really like this device, even if it isn't perfect. For just $100, I do believe this offers a lot for being able to carry all of these games with me on the go. This device can run a lot of games on here very well, though that just won't be the case for others. Luckily, you can load in whatever games you would like as long as the system can actually emulate said console or said game, but it can emulate up to something like the PlayStation Portable and the DS, which are probably the most recent systems that it can emulate. I still think that the triggers feel quite nice, as clicky as they are, and that the thumbsticks work pretty well, even if they might feel just a little bit more loose than I am used to. I would pay a little bit more to have just these quality of life improvements added in for like even a slightly more expensive model or just like an update to this model, but I am going to be on the lookout for something like that because I am genuinely interested. So with that said, strongly recommended. And if you're interested in purchasing this console, then I'll be making sure to leave affiliate links down to Amazon in the description. There's also going to be Luster, which is going to be a great tool for helping you find alternatives and also helping you find some sales along the way, so do make sure to click on that link because it is going to do all of that work for you. But if you would rather finance this system instead, because maybe you're not entirely sure on whether or not you want it, maybe you don't want to pay for it all outright, then you can just go ahead and give that a try through ABUNDA, because ABUNDA is going to be a very simple to use service that is going to allow you to finance it. No credit card needed or anything like that. It's just super simple to use. Highly recommend it if that's the way you'd like to go. Links to that down below too. If you use any of my links, I do get a small commission that does support the channel quite a bit. So if you were to use those, I would appreciate that quite a bit. And also don't forget that we do have the Tech Summit podcast running, so do make sure to subscribe to Tech Summit right here for that podcast. It does come out twice a week, and there is also going to be the Twitch channel and Discord, so do make sure to join up on those as well. Links to those down below. And for the rest of my social media, including my Instagram and my Twitter if you're into that. This has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you all later. Enjoy.